Well, after a wild and crazy divisional round, the Big D is back, ready to talk Chiefs Bills today. Before I bring in today's guest, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page where it's officially a conference championship week where we'll have content about that. Also, check out the Big D podcast for audio listeners, Spotify and Apple. So, I don't know what it is, but the Buffalo Bills keep breaking everybody's heart. And yesterday, Buffalo found another way to lose a heartbreaker. So, to talk all things Chiefs Bills, Papa Ron is back for the second time in as many weeks. And, boss, it looked good for a while.
Yeah, for about three quarters. uh, yeah, we just couldn't find a way to get any points in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, Kansas City breaking your heart again, 27-24. Started off great. I mean, Buffalo running and passing. I mean, Josh Allen getting two rushing touchdowns, and then Mahomes finding Kelsey. I'm like, of course, it's like Brady to Gronk, Brady, Mahomes to Kelsey. Why should we ever be surprised?
Yeah, I don't think we should. I think last night Bills were missing Terrell Bernard, their middle linebacker, a lot more than I think even I realized. I kind of I felt like going into that game that Terrell Dodson and either Dorian Williams or um, AJ Klein might be able to kind of fill the void a little bit. About halftime, I was saying that maybe it's time for Dorian Williams to come into the game, as I know he's a rookie, but he's probably the most athletic of our linebackers, especially of the healthy ones we had last night. And I think maybe he could have done a little bit better job on Kelsey just because of that. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's another heartbreaker to the Chiefs. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where we are with that. On to next season, we'll see what the Bills do going forward.
Yeah, I mean, game started off well. I mean, Josh Allen looked composed, fine, not just on the ground, but Buffalo as a whole running the ball well, while finding the open receivers. I mean, but be honest, there must have been a concern thinking Buffalo's dominating the ground game, but yet the score at halftime was what, 17-13, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think they came out with the right game plan. I do. And you look at that Chiefs defense; it's one of the top defenses in the league. I believe they're number two or three or somewhere around there. And our offense really kind of had our way with them. Allen was finding open guys. He was completing passes. James Cook was having a nice game. Josh Allen was running around doing his thing with the legs as well. I really felt like that the way the Bills' offense in that first half was operating is they were in control. At no point in that first half did I feel like that the Chiefs had an answer. That changed in the second half, which you expect that to happen. Coaches, especially the great ones like Andy Reid, they go in there, they make adjustments, they make some changes, and they found a way to kind of mitigate the rushing attacks, particularly with James Cook. I believe he finished with only a 3.4 yard per carry average, and that's largely because of what the Chiefs were able to do against him in that second half.
Yeah, and you know, Greg, and seemingly, I don't know what it is in these games, but Josh Allen's having to do everything. I mean, he's running and throwing. I mean, threw the ball 39 times, rushed 12 more, scored two on touchdown on the ground, threw a great touchdown to Khalil Shakir. Maybe the
Mm-hmm.
best throw of the weekend. Throwing where I'm not sure outside maybe that Mahomes guy if anybody could have thrown that ball.
Yeah, it's hard because 39 pass attempts that's a lot. Um, but I think he had less than 200 total yards passing too. So there was a lot of short throws, a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage. Trusting your guys to make plays and get those run after the catch yards, which they were doing for the most part. they were successful in that first half doing just that. The problem came in that second half when the deep throws just weren't there. There was the one to Khalil Shakir when he was open in the back of the end zone that would have been a touchdown had he not got hit on the release. I know there's a lot of comments about he should have dumped it underneath to Stephon Diggs because he was open coming across, and yes, he was open coming across. Allen made the right decision, I think, in that moment. Either decision would have been right because they were both open, right? He chose to go for the six. You can't ever fault a quarterback for going for six in that moment. He had it. He got bumped on the throw. I believe it was from the left side, so it probably Deion Dawkins just didn't hold his ground long enough or well enough um, for that one. And then there was the throw to Stephon Diggs, 50 yards down the I think the right sideline. It was Diggs. It was in his arms. It was a beautiful, beautiful pass. And if your team's number one, and if you're considered one of the elite receivers, you got to come down with that. You have to. And it's been kind of a struggle. It seems like the second half of the season for Diggs. I don't know what's happening there. I don't know if it's a decline because of age. From what everything that I've heard and as far as game film and things like that, that's not the issue. But for whatever reason, he number one on the team in drops, I believe, one of the lower catch rates on the team. You just can't have that from your number one guy.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, drops are going to happen. I mean, Kansas
Yeah.
City's receivers have seemingly not caught anything, everything, and then all of a sudden, MVS is catching pass. Rasheed Rice, Kelsey. That Diggs pass told me something. I'm like, if Buffalo stalls on catching perfect pass, I'm like, Buffalo's not going to win this game. I'm like that showed nerves because you didn't see Kansas City offensive players making mistakes. If Buffalo's best wide receivers dropping a perfectly thrown pass, I mean, if Diggs catches it, is that a touchdown? Perhaps. Is it a first down? Absolutely.
And I definitely think it would have led to points. Whether it had been 6 or 3, who knows? I don't think he probably would have scored on that play only because the coverage was there. There was good coverage. Allen just dropped it over his shoulder perfectly in front of him. Who knows what should have happened there? And I know some people, yeah, he's the most targeted player on the team, so you're gonna have some drops. But again, I just kind of go back to you're supposed to be one of the lead receivers in this league, one of the top 5 best at this position. When the team needs you, that's when you step up, and he just hasn't this year. And I like I said, I don't have an answer for it. I know a lot of people would say, "Well, he's being double covered." Yeah, I know, but so is Jamar Chase, so is Justin Jefferson, so is CeeDee Lamb. Yet they get their plays. They make those plays still. They find a way for their team to come through when they need to in the clutch. And again, that just has not happened down the stretch with Diggs. The Bills have been getting it done with Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, a little bit of Dawson Knox, James Cook, some of these younger players, which is great to see for the future of the team. Don't get me wrong, the nucleus there, the foundation is good. That Super Bowl window that people want to talk about right now is still wide open. As long as you got Josh Allen, you've got that great foundation of youth. There's not an issue there. But I do think that the team needs to start looking towards a number one. And I'm not saying replace Diggs because that's not going to happen. He's still under contract. They still are paying him an exorbitant amount of money. So he's not going anywhere. But I do think that this offseason, the Bills do need to put more of a focus on probably their top 2 receivers, to be honest. Khalil Shakir could be that guy. I think he's a perfect fit in the slot position. Um, but I do think the Bills need to start looking for some outside receivers.
Yeah, especially because Diggs has been very quiet particularly December and January, even the last 3 postseason. I mean, Diggs has not been himself. I mean, Gabriel Davis scored 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs 2 years ago. Last year was everybody else, and even yesterday, Diggs was very quiet. I mean, Dalton Kincaid was the leading receiver, and then Khalil Shakir caught Buffalo's only touchdown pass yesterday. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking, I don't care if double, triple team Cooper Cup in the Super Bowl where the Chiefs put like 8 guys on him, still catching passes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. If you're an elite receiver, you should. You, I don't. I mean, I don't want to sit here and keep piling on Diggs, and I'm not certainly blaming him for the loss yesterday. That was a team effort in that loss, and this is the ultimate team game. You can't blame one person. You can't blame Sean McDermott because he chose to roll with an injured punter. You can't blame Stephon Diggs because he dropped the pass. You can't. That's the problem I think with a lot of fans, and not just Bills fans, but fans in general. They feel like they've got to have a scapegoat. They've got to have somebody to blame, whether it's Tyler Bass because of the missed field goal, or whatever the case is. But you go back, Diggs catches that pass. Bass probably isn't in that position. If McDermott doesn't decide to go for that fourth down punt, who knows what could have happened? Maybe we push there's so many what ifs that you have to look at this as a total game. You can't just point at one guy and say, "Well, that's we lost because of that guy." That's a typical fan reaction, but it's a team effort in the loss. So, but with Diggs, yeah, like I said, if you're supposed to be an elite guy, you've got to find ways to get yourself open to make those catches when they're there. And I've seen too many times down the stretch where he's dropped some passes, that, like even screen passes. Like what? Yeah, I don't. You got to catch those.
Um, and then defensively, I mean, the Bills' defense, I think, has been underrated for a long time. I mean, but seemingly the Bills' defense is banged up from day one this year. Tre'Davious White tore his Achilles week 4. Matt
The
Milano,
last 2 years.
Matt Milano, yeah, torn ACL and torn Achilles. No, no bueno. But Matt Milano broke his leg in London. And then seemingly the Bills nearly ran out of linebackers yesterday. Not good against Travis Kelce, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, it's a 2 year issue now. We had injuries last year that I think kind of derailed the team, and some other off the field things. Obviously, the Damar Hamlin situation. I think emotionally that team was just drained and had nothing left in the tank. But this year's team, I think the beginning of the year when everybody was healthy, the defense looked great. They were getting pressure. They looked fantastic. Then the injuries started to pile up. The middle of the season, they struggled. They struggled to get stops when they needed to, and then it felt like they were okay. We figured out what we're going to do with this group. We figured out how to play defense with this group that we've got here, backups and some of the starters still. But then I think losing Benford for this game last night and also Bernard, I think those two losses were bigger than we anticipated, especially Bernard because he's been fantastic for the Bills. He's been getting in there, and he's been making game-changing plays all season long. And I think that really kind of showed, particularly against Pacheco and even Balen Spector when he's been healthy and in the games. He's played very, very well also, and he was out for this game. And at one point, I believe we even had AJ Klein came out of the game, and I think Dodson did too. And we had Tyler Medikevich, who's a lifelong special teamers. At one point, he was in the game. It became too much. And when you're playing against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, regardless of what his supporting cast is, at some point those injuries are going to catch up to you, and someone like Mahomes, he's going to take advantage of those, and they did. They did a great job last night of doing that, and hopefully next year, 2024, maybe we can be healthy all the way throughout the season and not suffer some of these losses. Like Tre'Davious White, I'm a little concerned for him because torn ACL, torn Achilles. You're talking about a position who is expected to cut quickly, change directions very quickly. That's going to be really, really hard on a player coming back from an Achilles. That's one reason why you don't see a lot of running backs come back from that injury because of the demand on their ankles and their feet, their lower body. And you suffer an injury like that, and it's tough to come back. Fortunately for the Bills, we've got Douglas under contract for 1 more year. We've got Benford will be back next season, obviously. I think Kyer Elam could be in play as well. I think he's going to rebound next year. So as far as the defensive backs are still in good shape there for the corners, but we're going to have to wait to see what we get with White.
What what was different with the Bills in the second half, particularly the fourth quarter? Because I'm like, usually you see great if you run the ball well in the first half, you run the ball well in the second. I'm like Buffalo's offense only put up what 7 points yesterday.
7 points in the second half, yeah, and that was the third quarter. They were shut out in the fourth. Again, the only thing I can think of as far as the running game is it did feel like in the second half Allen was running a little bit less than he was in the first, and that might have also been because of the Chiefs probably made some adjustments to help mitigate some of that. And like I said, with James Cook, same thing. He was running well initially, and I just think they did a good job of um, slowing that down as well and kind of forcing the Bills to kind of go back to the air. And the Chiefs defense, like I said, it's one of the best in the league. And in the first half to three quarters, Buffalo had their way, and then the Chiefs put the clamps down. They did a good job.
I also think with Kansas City, I don't think I don't think the Chiefs fear Josh Allen throwing the ball deep because it's weird with a Josh Allen team. Like, you know how many 20-yard plays the Bills racked up yesterday?
20 yards, was none.
0.
Yeah,
I think
not for trying. That's for sure. They were trying, but
Kansas City got 8 20-yard plays yesterday.
yeah, um, yeah. The receivers chose a great time to decide to catch the football. I don't know that they had any drops in that game, um, which is the team led the league in drops this year. But just like I've got a buddy that's a Chiefs fan here local. He's one of my closest friends. He was kind of frustrated with the Chiefs because they're dropping passes. Like I don't think they're going to get very far, even if they once they're in the playoffs. But I told him I was like, it's Andy Reid, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's the Chiefs. You can't count them out. Despite maybe not having as an explosive an offense as what we've seen in the past, that's Mahomes is one of those guys that when you're in the playoffs, he's just different. Allen's the same way. He's in the playoffs. He's just different. There's always this talk about his interceptions year after year after year, but this was his 10th playoff game. He has four total interceptions. Four. So, and I think well over 2,700 yards. I mean, he's been fantastic. And I think he had 3 touchdowns last night. So he's up to 26 touchdowns, total touchdowns in those 10 playoff games. So there are certain players in this league that when the lights are on and they're in that moment, they rise up. Unfortunately, on the other side of that, there's players that don't, i.e., Dak Prescott. Um, and in the past, it's kind of been the Bills' defense, right? I think this particular season, the injuries were just too much for them to overcome.
Are the Bills too reliant on Josh Allen? Because seemingly maybe the Bills, I mean, we saw James Cook run for a ton of yards against the Cowboys. And then the Bills able to win with defense, the running game, and not Josh Allen being Superman. And I mean, yeah, Josh Allen was Superman against Miami, but are the Bills over reliant on Josh Allen?
I don't think so. I mean, I know a lot of people disagree with that, but they've got weapons that he can go to. There's Kincaid, which I hope we see him implemented more into the offense next year. But there's James Cook, there's Khalil Shakir. There's people there that he can rely on. This particular game, the Chiefs they figured out how to stop Cook in that second half, and Allen had to do it. And sometimes that's what makes players like him great. Patrick Mahomes is the same way. Lamar Jackson. You look at these guys, and I don't know why people want to talk about Allen so much as being so reliant on him. He always has to be Superman. Well, yeah, there's cases for any player like him where they have to become that guy. Patrick Mahomes, the same way. Lamar Jackson, like I said, there's moments in these games where their teams do depend on them to be Superman and and make the plays. Um, Especially with the Chiefs. I mean, look at this year. They got Kelsey, and that's about it. Rasheed Rice is kind of coming on a little bit. Um, but I don't know, with Allen, it's who he is. I don't want to take the running out of that game because it is part of his game. It is a weapon, and it's something the defenses have to game plan for. I think he's done a better job of getting down though. We haven't seen him hurdle anybody in a while. It's been a minute. So that's the only thing is just eliminating some of those hits and getting down and getting out of bounds uh, when you need to. But this team's going to go as far as Allen takes them, and I think when you look at most teams with quarterbacks like that, if they're an elite quarterback, that's how it rolls. You take any of these elite quarterbacks off their team, and they're just not the same. It's not just Buffalo; it's all of these elite quarterbacks. It's the Lamar Jacksons and the Mahomes of the world. You take them out of there, and their teams are different.
And also in some cases, you don't want to take the running out of a quarterback because offensive line play is down in general. So if Josh Allen's running less, that might be a good thing, but having that threat also means, hey, I have to keep a spy on you. That's one more guy not in coverage.
Yeah, exactly. And and with the Bills, I think in that first half, because I was talking about it in the broadcast, that they didn't really have a spy on him. I think they started to do that later on in the game, though. And you would think that in theory that they would have open people, and they did in some instances, but the offensive line didn't hold up in a couple of those cases. Like for example, like I said, the Khalil Shakir in the end zone, that should have been six. And I don't think if or I think if Allen hadn't gotten hit, and it wasn't a big, it's not like he got blasted or anything, but it was he got bumped into and it affected the throw. And there's other opportunities that the Bills just didn't capitalize on when they were there, like the Stephon Diggs down the field throw. There was another one to Sherfield that he dove for and got his hands on, and probably should have been able to pull that in. Wasn't the perfect throw, but it was there, and Sherfield should have came down with it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those plays. Speaking of plays, how much blame do you think Sean McDermott gets? Because I mean, we didn't see the same mistakes from Kansas City. Is that because Andy Reid's a great offensive mind? Kansas City's offensive line didn't make mistakes, caught the ball, and Sean McDermott's a defensive minded coach. Is that the is that maybe the difference in Kansas City winning these playoff games and Buffalo not winning these playoff games?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, of course, you can look at any game and probably point out couple of opportunities where maybe the decision that the coach made you don't necessarily agree with because it didn't work. That fake punt, if that works, McDermott's a genius and everybody loves him for it, right? That's just how this game works. But if it doesn't, suddenly he's the worst coach on the planet and needs to get fired. It's a ridiculous take as far as I'm concerned, because I've talked about this multiple times, especially when the Bills were sitting at 6-6, and there was a lot of the fan base calling for McDermott's firing. This team, these players love McDermott. They have repeatedly said things like they would go to war with this guy. He is their coach. You get rid of him, I guarantee you a lot of this roster would follow him to wherever it is he ends up because he would have another head coaching job within a week. Um, I wouldn't even be shocked if somebody like Josh Allen's like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to sign an extension contract because you guys fired my coach. You started over. I'm going to go with McDermott. Is that likely? No. Elite quarterbacks typically don't move on until later in their career, but Matt Milano's of the world, who every single time it comes up for a contract, he takes less money to stay in Buffalo. You got guys like Jordan Poyer last season, same thing. He hit the free agent mark. He's like, you know what? I want to do this, run this back with this Bills team. Those decisions these players make, it's because of the culture that Sean McDermott has built. You take that out of the equation, guarantee you start losing players. Guarantee you there's some of these name free agents that are coming up that won't sign with Bills because of the uncertainty of a new coach. I think it's silly. I think it's foolish conversation to want to fire him, but that's like I said, fan base wants to point the finger and blame one person, and unfortunately, that's going to be largely McDermott.
What did you think of the fake punt when the Bills were down 3? in the fourth.
Again, that's one of those things where I don't agree with it. I wouldn't have done it myself. But like I said, if it works, he's a genius and everybody loves him. And that's always been kind of one of the knocks on him is he's not aggressive enough. But as soon as he is aggressive and it doesn't work out, people are like, well, that was a stupid decision. Why'd you do that? You should be fired. And there's always that knee-jerk reaction in those situations and those types of plays. We saw it in there was maybe it was a Detroit game. They went for it on fourth down. I think it might have been a fake punt. I could be wrong, but it was somewhat recent in a game, and it worked out. And it was like, oh, such an aggressive play. That was a great move. Whatever. If it doesn't work, you're blasted for it. If it does work, you're a genius, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, it's darn if you do and darn it if you don't.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if I would have said to you, the Bills would have run for 182 yards, have the ball for 37 minutes, and Josh Allen wouldn't throw any interceptions, I would have. You probably thinking the Bills win that game, right?
Yeah, yeah, you would. 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, 180 plus yards. Yeah, if you look at that, I think you probably assume a win, but doesn't always work out that way.
I mean, if not for Nico Holden fumbling on the goal line, it might have been a 10-point loss instead of 3.
Yeah.
And then of course the field goal, and Buffalo fans are not gonna like wide right. I'm like wide right should just be outlawed in upstate in Western New York, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, history repeating itself, right? Coming right back around and it happens again. But um yeah, like I said, I don't put it entirely on Tyler Bass. Yeah, that's his job. Yeah, he was in a position, should have probably hit that. It has been a little bit of a down year for him. And I remember, sitting here last night watching the game with my family and thinking that don't put it in Tyler Bass' hands. Just don't. You've got to score a touchdown because sometimes you just get that unnerving feeling about a situation, and that's exactly what happened. And my concern came to fruition. But again, Bill shouldn't have been in that position. There was multiple plays throughout the game that if they make their plays, the game is different. So, and even going back 30 something years to that first Super Bowl and Scott Norwood missing that field goal, watching that game, and I watched it many times. There was many opportunities in that game that the Bills could have won that game. There was the safety from Bruce Smith. He literally had his hands wrapped around Hostetler's wrist with the ball in his hand, and he didn't knock the ball out. So that's an opportunity for a touchdown instead of a safety. So there's just several moments, and you can do that with any game. There's several moments throughout any game. If it goes just 2 or 3 plays the other way, it's a completely different ball game. So I know there's a lot of hate towards Bass today, and unfortunately, I've heard that he had to delete his Instagram account because he was getting death threats and just stupid, immature fans. But that's the nature of this game, unfortunately. And there's, yeah, I don't care what fan base it is, whether it's my own or another team's. There's people like that in every fan base, and that's kind of a problem with society in general today.
I remember playing in Super Bowl 25 where Mark Ingram got by about
Yep.
6 Bill defenders. I mean, if one of those Bills tackles him, maybe the Giants are kicking a field goal.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he dodged all 11 guys on that play.
At least twice.
Yeah.
So, is beating the Chiefs? I mean, do you compare the Chiefs with the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Rob Gronkowski Patriot teams in many ways? Because it looked like Kansas City played a very New England kind of game yesterday.
Yeah. Pretty much. Like I said before we started this episode, Mahomes is the new Brady. The Chiefs are the new Patriots, and there's this rivalry that's brewing between these two teams. It does remind me of the old Patriots and Colts rivalries with Manning and Brady. And Manning did get his Super Bowls later on, so I'm hoping that that's the end that the Bills will get one or two before it's all said and done. And I honestly do think that Allen will and the Bills will get one at some point. But the big thing is that this injury's got to stop. But again, that's the nature of the game. But yeah, that's who they are. They're the new Patriots of the league. Um, yeah, and got a lot of messages from other fan bases during this week about hoping that the Bills knock out Mahomes, but it didn't happen.
Is beating the Chiefs a bigger physical or mental hurdle now? Because it seems like it's like so close, but not quite there.
I definitely think it's tough because if you look at how these games have played out, Allen has always played great. He in every one of the games he's played against the Chiefs, he has been fantastic. So I don't think that there's really a mental hangup with him now or even going forward. I think he's fully confident that he can do what needs to be done. I think they did show a stat last night that I think the number was eight or nine times where Allen has led the Bills on a game-winning or tying drive, and they're 2-6 in those games. So my concern would become more about maybe the defense and starting to, some of the players like, oh, here we go again. If even one thing doesn't go right, but that's been the problem. That's every single time we face the Chiefs. That's been the issue, is the defense. So we'll see. Like I said, I don't think there's necessarily a mental hurdle just yet, especially as far as Allen's concerned, because he is just one of those guys. When the moment's on the line, he rises up.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen's thrown what one pick in three playoff games against the Chiefs, and threw four touchdowns. The last time he scored three, counted for three touchdowns, so seven touchdowns,
Hmm.
no picks last two games against Mahomes. Unless Josh Allen's flying the plane, driving the bus, or maybe in your case driving the snowplow, what else could he do?
Exactly. Yeah, well, that's like I was saying. He's got over, I think, 2,700 yards passing in 10 games. He averages about 60 yards rushing. It's only four interceptions, and of those four picks, two of them came last year against in the Miami game in the wild card round. So half of them in that one game. That's phenomenal. And there's so much talk about his turnovers, but when it's playoff time, it's a rarity for him to turn it over like that. But hey, maybe next year we can get into the playoffs again, and I have no doubt they will. I just want them to get there healthy, and I know that no team is 100% healthy going into the playoffs. We know that, but man, Daquan Jones for the majority of the season, Trey White again, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford. Uh, you name the
Jordan Phillips,
player, we've played more than a game or two without him at some point this year.
Jordan Phillips.
Yeah,
He'd
it's
be,
been a
he'd
lot.
be a safest
I
for
and it sounded like potentially Jordan Phillips and I also heard Micah Hyde are contemplating retirement, so we'll see how that plays out. Um, the Bills have a lot of questions they're going to have to find answers to this offseason, but
I'm glad you mentioned finances because I'm not sure you looked at Buffalo's cap situation. Not good,
43.7.
not good. You've definitely been on Spot Track, right?
Yeah, yeah, SpotTrack, overthecap.com as well. That's probably the main one I like to use, but um, yeah, 43.7 million over the cap. That doesn't account for the potential cap increase, which we know is going to happen. We don't know how much that's going to be. But that's the thing. We've got some contracts on this team, on this roster, that are really kind of holding the team back at this point. So I don't expect any big splashy, fancy moves this offseason. I do anticipate this team is probably going to roll it back with the majority of the same roster next year, just out of necessity. You look at Von Miller, who unfortunately had probably the worst season of his career, and he's a $32 million cap hit if they were to release him. So that's not going to happen, right? The hope is that maybe he can come back next year and be more of who he was before the injury, the ACL. But he is, I think, 35, 34, somewhere around there. So we'll have to wait and see. Then there's Tre'Davious White. I think his cap hit is somewhere around 17. Don't quote me on that because that could be off. And then there's also Dawson Knox. Love Dawson Knox, but for what they're paying him, I want more out of him. But to get more out of him means more targets. More targets means Kincaid's not going to get those targets, and I would rather be Kincaid. So, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding for the Bills this offseason and next year, and I think they're going to have to get through the next season or two, particularly the next season with some of these contracts before they can start really making some big changes as far as the finances go.
Oh, by the way, Josh Allen. Well, you got Buffalo saw what happened with Josh Allen cheap. Guess what Josh Allen's cap hit's going to be next year?
Oh yeah, it's a lot.
$47 million.
Yeah, yeah. The Bills are going to have to do some salary cap, as the guys over at Shout Podcast like to call it, some salary cap gymnastics to get things figured out
I'm
going
not
into
sure how
next
the
season.
New
But
Orleans Saints get out of a salary cap hell every year because the Saints are always like 80 something million over the cap.
yeah, yeah, I remember a couple of seasons ago they were 78, I think, million, and they found a way to get under the cap. And these teams will because they have to, right? They don't have a choice. They have to be under the cap, so they'll find ways to do it. How they do that, that's going to be the question. Um, I do hope that, uh, like I said, I think next year they're just going to have to basically take the hit, roll it back with a lot of the same players. I don't think they're going to have. I think their depth is going to take a hit. So if they do get hit with injuries, they might have a really hard time getting in the playoffs if they get nailed with those. But again, there's a lot of youth on this team that has played well as of late. Valen Spector has been playing well. Terrell Bernard, obviously. Terrell Dotson's a free agent, so that's going to be interesting to see what he decides to do. Um, you've got Poyer's under contract for another season. Taylor Rapp is a free agent as well, so they got to figure out that, especially if Hyde leaves. If he decides to retire, then Rapp, I think, becomes even a bigger priority. You've got Daquan Jones right now, who is not under contract. He's set to become a free agent. In fact, the Bills have one interior defensive lineman under contract right now for 2024, and that's Ed Oliver. So fortunately, they got that deal done. But I think Jones is going to be another priority this offseason. You've got to figure out a way to get him back as well. But I think the depth on this team is going to take a hit for 2024 for sure.
Are the Bills still in their Super Bowl window, or is it closing ever so tightly?
Like as long as Josh Allen is alive and kicking, this window is going to forever be open. That's He's going to will this team to win, and he's going to continue to do what he has to do, whether that's putting the cape on or whatever. As long as he's under center and healthy, this team will always have a chance. 2024, like I said, is going to be interesting because if they can't stay healthy, if they do struggle with these injuries again, I do think it's going to be tough. After that, I think they can start to kind of make some more moves again because they will have some of these contracts that they could potentially get out from under and not take such a big hit. But the silver lining for 2024 is this year's draft. It's a very, very deep class. You've got a ton of really, really good wide receivers who I think could come in day one and have an instant impact. And I believe the Bills have 9 draft picks this year available to them. So if they can hit on at least half of those, I think they'll be okay. But if they don't, like I said, it could be tough. Injuries could really derail next season if that's the case. But we'll see. I think Bean does a pretty good job of drafting especially the last couple of years. He's hit on some late round picks like Khalil Shakir, like Matt Milano. Those guys are both fifth rounders. Even Terrell Bernard in the third round was now looking back is a fantastic pick as well. So
Yeah, did you hear that? I heard reports today that Josh Allen played the second half of the game with like an ACU sprain.
I don't know. I know that there was talk of a. I heard a little bit of conversation about the shoulder injury that he suffered somewhere in the middle of the season, and but as far as any specific injuries in this game, I haven't heard of anything in particular. Like I said, I know he's kind of been nursing a shoulder injury for most of the second half of the season. Obviously, not anything significant. He's still launching the ball 50, 60 yards downfield with ease, but
Yeah, I mean, nobody's 100% this time. I heard it was like week 7, but Josh Allen played basically second 2/3. I mean, I guess when you 6'5", 240 pounds, you're gonna get banged up more than most.
yeah, um, that is an accurate statement. But I, I, I mean, I don't know. We've seen him take some hits, and he just always bounces back up. I'm not really worried about the longevity of his career because of that. I know that some people have compared him to the likes of Cam Newton, and they're like, well, look what happened to Newton after he got beat up all the time because he was running so much. But to me, that is more about Newton's inability to be a pocket passer. I think Allen can do that. I think Allen can be just a purely pocket passer if he needs to be once he gets later in his career. You look at Newton, even in Newton's MVP year, he completed less than 60% of the passes. He's never been a good passer. You can't say that about Allen. He's a good passer. So even if he starts to get banged up, starts to lose a step because of that, I'm not too concerned about him being just purely a passer.
Yeah, and plus, I think in today's NFL, mobility matters because the offensive line play has never been worse. I mean, look at the two guys in the AFC Championship game. Let's see, Lamar might be the best running quarterback we've ever seen, and Mahomes. Just saying, I
Yeah.
think I'd rather have Lamar than Brock Purdy on my team, or Josh Allen over Brock Purdy on my team.
Yeah. Well, and the Chiefs have a great offensive line. They do. That's one of the best offensive lines in football. And there was a few moments in that game last night where we were so close. Gregory Rousseau he played a really good game. If you watch him, there was a couple times he had Mahomes, but yeah, Mahomes he, he's not fleet of foot. He's not going to outrun too many people, but he's really good at moving around inside the pocket and picking up what he can in the running and with his legs. There's really not too many quarterbacks better at that than him, to be honest. At just getting enough movement here and there to buy himself a little more time to make the throw. I don't know how many times in that game last night we saw that happen where we had him, he didn't made a great play, got out of the pressure, got away from the pressure, and made the throw.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes sneakily quick.
Yeah.
Was last night's loss harder than any of the Bills' Super Bowl losses in the early 90s?
No, absolutely not. For me personally, that first Super Bowl was the hardest. Um, yeah, as far as all the games that I've watched, the hardest loss. The Tennessee loss with the Music City Miracle, that one was pretty rough. But that one I actually did not watch live because that's when I was in the military, so I was off doing training. So I didn't even watch that game until I got home and I watched the recording, and by that point I'd already knew what happened. So that one kind of takes a little bit of a backseat. The only thing with this one, and I was telling my family this last night before the game, even if we don't advance to the Super Bowl, I want to win this game. I want to beat the Chiefs. I am tired of their narrative that Allen can't beat Mahomes when we all know It's not Allen versus Mahomes. They're not in the octagon going toe to toe. It's Mahomes versus our defense and their defense versus Allen. That's how this game actually works. Even though people always want to make the comparison and against so and so quarterback, these guys are 4-3 or whatever the case may be. Um, that kind of goes back to the whole quarterbacks or wins being a quarterback stat. I don't buy into that because again, this is the ultimate team sport. It's not just the one guy. Can a quarterback lose a game for you? Absolutely. Can he win it? Yeah, but he can also lose it because somebody else didn't do their job. And so I'm not a big fan of that, QB versus QB thing. But as far as this particular loss, it definitely ranks up there. Even the 13-second one, I think, in my mind, was the worst loss because of just how great Allen played in that game, how great the offense played in that game, and then to come up short the way they did is, that was heartbreaking. This one, yeah, it sucked, but I woke up this morning, I was like, you know what? We got a good team. We do. And as long as Allen's under center, we'll always have a shot. We'll always have a chance. So I'll take that any day over the 17-year playoff drought again.
Hey, you know what I would say? You go into every year with one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the game. Guess what? You've got a chance.
Always have a chance. Yeah. Always. And who knows? He might go his whole career and never win one.
Dan
Marino never got one.
that doesn't. Dan Fouts never got to a Super Bowl. Jim Kelly never won a Super Bowl. I mean,
Yeah,
it feels wrong that Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl, but
there's a lot of great ones out there that never got it, and it's kind of frustrating from my perspective that the media and fans want to always, point at that as, well, you're not that good of a quarterback because you never won the Super Bowl. I don't agree with that at all, because again, it's a team thing, and if the team doesn't get it done, well, then that's just how it is. It's not just his fault. It's not just because of Mahomes that they won 2 Super Bowls. It's not just because of Joe Montana they won 4 Super Bowls. It's not just because of Troy Aikman that the Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls. It's always about the team, and it's difficult for me to understand why fans can't understand that concept. But that's how it is. They're always going to point to that. They're always going to say, "Oh, Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league because he's got all the accolades." Does he have all the accolades? Yeah, but is it because he had Tyreek Hill to throw to and catch the ball? Is it because, and not even Tyreek Hill, Hill was great, but everybody on that team helped make him great. Andy Reid helps make him great. It's the same thing with, you go back to Joe Montana, Bill Walsh. There's always reasons, like, for example, put Mahomes on Carolina Panthers team. How good do you think the Panthers are going to be?
Or put
Is he
CJ
going to win any Super Bowls?
Or put CJ Stroud on the Panthers this year and Bryce Young on the Texans.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to have a supporting cast, whether that's just on the roster or if that's the coaching staff or a combination of. I think that's why those San Francisco teams back in the 80s were so dominant, because they had one of the best coaches in NFL history and the best wide receiver in NFL history. Oh, by the way, one of the best safeties in Ronnie Lott, one of the best all-purpose running backs in Roger Craig. Even the Bills in the 90s, Andre Reed, Bruce Smith, Marv Levy as the coach. Like, you can't do this by yourself.
And also those 49er teams had, I think we both concur, the greatest wide receiver ever, Jerry Rice.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, the good news for Bills fans, there's always next year, balls.
That's becoming our annual motto.
Trust me, being a Jag fan, that's what I've been saying forever. So.
Yeah, but that's why we keep watching, because you never know.
Thanks for, well, yeah, I don't know what the ratings would have been for last night's game, but I'm sure they were through the roof.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
All right, Ronnie. So thanks for hopping on. We wish you well. Maybe this time next year we're talking Bills Jags AFC Championship.
Maybe you never know. Anything crazy things can happen. I just don't want the Chiefs back in there.